Scope creep. The idea of uncontrolled growth within your project, it's the bane of every beginner game dev's existence, along with planning, project management,
making art, making music, learning programming, marketing your game, making game dev a full-time job,
and just being happy with your general existence. The major problem with scope creep is that many people don't know what it is and don't know when it's happening to your project. Sometimes in an effort to make your project better, you lose track of what the original intention of your project was in the first place. So, with that being said, let's talk about what exactly scope creep is, how it killed some of my projects, and how to counteract scope creep when it begins to reveal itself. Now, what exactly is scope creep, and how do you know when it's happening? Let's say you have this beautiful game idea, a farming game where you can compete against other farmers on one plot of land. Your game has this concept right there and can be described in one line, a competitive farming game. As you design the game, you begin to see ways to improve the quality of the game, and you think, what if my farming game had RPG battles? This is when scope creep begins to present itself as you spend days, weeks, months trying to implement a battle system into your game. You've deluded yourself into thinking that a completely new and unrelated feature is something that is necessary to making the game better. And this is where certain devs start to get confused. There's a difference between scope creep and quality of life changes. Let's revisit the one line that describes this idea, a competitive farming game. Since the idea itself is quite broad, there's room for expansion. But when identifying scope creep, a big thing that helps me personally is thinking, what was the original intention of my game? Did you want RPG battles in your farming game because you thought it was necessary to your game's core? Or did you just see someone add RPG battles and think, man, my game would be so much better if I included that? I know I've personally fallen victim to this a few times, so I thought I'd share my experience with two projects that I still am making and that I had to leave due to scope creep. If you've been on this channel since the beginning, you may remember the name Untitled Gun Game. This was a couch party game where you battled your friends, and was my way of trying to make a party game with my friends actually in the game. It was supposed to be a simple project that would have taken me about a year to fully develop, and progress on the game was actually pretty decent, until I decided, you know what would make the game even better? Online multiplayer. Now, here's the thing. After having some time to step back and rework the game a bit, I actually do believe online multiplayer could enhance the game. But the problem was that the game wasn't supposed to be that. It was a couch party game, and I never originally intended to implement a networking system. But of course, as a game dev who had only been in the field for about 4 months at the time, I thought it couldn't be that hard to add online multiplayer. Yeah, it was pretty damn hard. I had zero experience with port forwarding and networking, so I assumed I can learn it relatively quickly and just slap it onto my game. But of course, the days of research quickly turned to months, and I completely burned myself out on a project that was supposed to be a quick experience for fun. So, it went to the shelves, and I continued to work on smaller projects that had a much more digestible scope. This even led to me learning how to publish games on itch, so that was actually kind of cool. When I put Untitled Gun Game to the side, I still wanted to make a big game, but do something within my limits. This is when the second idea came into my head, making a roguelike.
Good lord, what's wrong with this guy?
A couple months after the second devlog for Untitled Gun Game went out, I made a devlog talking about my next game, Darkness. Darkness is a monotonal roguelike where you escape a wall of darkness trying to consume you. I know it's very edgy, just bear with me. What made Darkness work is that it contained aspects of things I already understood. I knew how to make a combat system, and I definitely knew how to create guns. I had experience with very simple enemy AI creation, and I knew how to make platform levels and parallax backgrounds. I had all the aspects of an idea that was achievable because I already had experience with them in the past, but as I continued to develop the game, I thought of a feature that made the game more amazing. Procedural generation with pre-made rooms. Yeah, I know. Now, I'm sure most people have heard of procedural generation, but for those of you who haven't, it's a method of creating data algorithmically as opposed to manual. All that means is instead of me having to, create the rooms from scratch, I could program an algorithm to create the rooms for me. Except I'm stupid because I wanted to do this with pre-made rooms. This made learning procedural generation a nightmare because 1, I had zero experience with algorithms, and 2, I had to think of how rooms would connect to each other. I had researched how games like Spelunky did this, and I thought I could do it too. First of all, I owe Derek Yu a personal apology for even thinking I could learn his core mechanic in less than 6 months. But also the problem is that I had no grasp for how hard it was to actually make some of these ideas. I was still very new to game dev, so I would simply see a finished project and assume, well, I can do that. How hard can it be? Hard. It was very hard. When the research was all said and done, I had retained nothing, and I was left with an unfinished, but actually kind of good looking, test room. That's when I decided it was time to put the game on the shelf. So, what's the point then? What do you do in this situation? Start small. Oh my god. I used to really hate when people would tell me to start small because I felt like it was holding me back. But when I started making prototypes, it actually opened my eyes to what it meant to create a fully fleshed out game. Let's take Pong for example. The game is simply to hit the ball between your paddle and the opponent's. I actually highly encourage people to try making this game first because the response is usually, that's boring, it's way too simple of a concept. I don't think I'm gonna learn anything. And to that I say, if it's so simple, then do it. Something so simple shouldn't take you a long time to make, right? So when I attempted to recreate Pong, that's when I realized how much actually went into the game itself. On the surface, it's just a simple looking game, but the steps to get to this point requires a lot of back-end work. Now that you understand this, you can start working on your small throwaway game. Now, what's the takeaway from all of this? The biggest point of this video is to make sure you understand what you get into before tackling large projects, or even small projects. And when starting new projects, try to remember these steps. Define what your project scope is before you start your project. This will help you avoid pitfalls in the future. If you do plan on making changes, log them and separate them from the original idea. That way you can still focus on the core idea and add anything new after. Set priorities for yourself. Understand what needs to be done versus what you'd like to see done. If you have this super beautiful world and amazing art, but your game is broken and boring, what's the point in the art? And identify ideas that would not be necessary. With every idea, think, how would this affect the gameplay as a whole? And if this idea was not in the game, would it really matter? All of these have helped me keep a sense of organization with projects and have even helped me organize my dream project to the point where I understand the amount of work it would take. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Will I actually finish Untitled Gun Game and Darkness? And the answer to that is yes, well, kind of. I've actually been working on Untitled Gun Game in secret for the past year, and there's a lot I've learned when it comes to making a fully fleshed out game. But as for Darkness, it's been repurposed into something that I believe is even better than my original idea. So I can't wait to start showing that off and streaming the development process. I think that a lot of the scope issues come from being an artist and game dev, because as an artist, you tend to want to experiment with different things. But game dev requires you to honestly block in. You have to stay focused on one thing until you either abandon it or complete it. But at the end of the day, creating should be fun. So try not to add any additional stress on yourself, okay? And of course, thank you for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to Vanessa and Hannibal for supporting me and the channel. Your support has really motivated me to continue making content for everyone to enjoy. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to like and subscribe so you don't miss an upload. And if you want to join a community of people that share the same interest as you, there's a link to my Discord server down below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.